The stars above twinkled faintly through the haze of Jupiter's atmosphere. Harlan Bishop adjusted the gravity field around his station, a dome nestled into the frozen crust of Ganymede, and sighed. The hum of the life support system was his only companion. Thanksgiving had arrived, though it meant little when you were 400 million miles from Earth with no one to share it with. Harlan shuffled to the tiny kitchenette and pulled out a ration pack. The label read turkey-flavored protein paste. He grimaced but set it aside, lighting a small candle he'd saved for the occasion. He murmured to himself, "Happy Thanksgiving, Harlan," then chuckled dryly. Talking to yourself again? No wonder the last crew didn't stick around. His assignment on Ganymede was vital, monitoring the AI mining bots excavating deep into the moon's icy crust. But the isolation had taken its toll. 6 months into his 2-year stint, he'd started naming the bots. By now, he even argued with them. The dome's comm system chirped, startling him. Harlan wasn't expecting any messages. Supply ships came once every 3 months, and it wasn't due for another 6 weeks. He shuffled over and activated the panel. Static hissed for a moment, then a voice crackled through. "This is Captain Mira Salas of the Constellation, broadcasting on all frequencies. Our ship is damaged and we're low on power. Requesting assistance from any nearby stations. Coordinates transmitting now." Harlan straightened. His pulse quickened as he tapped the console to pinpoint the distress signal. The ship was nearby, well, relatively speaking. It was drifting just outside Ganymede's orbital path, about 2,000 kilometers out. For a moment he hesitated. The station wasn't equipped for rescue missions. If anything went wrong, he could end up stranded, or worse. But then he glanced at the flickering candle on his counter. What kind of human would he be if he ignored the plea? An hour later, Harlan had prepped his battered shuttle, the Dauntless, and plotted a course to intercept the ship. The old vessel creaked as it lifted off, its thrusters sputtering against the moon's weak gravity. "Hold together, girl," he muttered, patting the console. The Constellation came into view, its once sleek hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts. The ship was barely functioning, its lights flickering weakly. Harlan docked his shuttle and boarded, his suit's helmet lamp cutting through the dim interior. "Hello?" he called, his voice echoing down the corridor. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in her late 30s, her face smudged with grime. Behind her were 3 others, a young man cradling a wounded arm, an older engineer, and a child clutching a stuffed bear. "Thank God," Mira said, her voice trembling with relief. "We didn't think anyone would answer." "What happened?" Harlan asked, glancing at the group. "Power core malfunction," Mira explained. "We had to shut it down to prevent an overload. Life support's failing, and we're out of emergency rations." "Well, you're in luck," Harlan said, gesturing back toward his shuttle. "I've got supplies and a working station. Let's get you out of here." Back at the dome, Harlan set about making his unexpected guests comfortable. The child, a boy named Leo, marveled at the station's modest garden, an array of hardy plants growing under artificial light. Mira and the engineer, Gregor, helped unload the emergency supplies, while Harlan tended to the young man's injury. As the hours passed, the sterile dome began to feel warmer. Harlan dug into his stash and produced a small bottle of synthetic whiskey, pouring a round for the adults. "This isn't exactly a feast," he admitted as they gathered around the table, which now held rehydrated potatoes, vacuum-sealed vegetables, and the infamous turkey-flavored protein paste. "It's perfect," Mira said, raising her glass. "To humanity," Gregor added, "and to the kindness of strangers." They toasted, the clink of glasses reverberating through the dome. For the first time in months, Harlan felt truly alive. As the evening wore on, stories flowed as freely as the synthetic whiskey. Harlan recounted his youth on Earth, Mira shared tales of her time as a deep space pilot, and even little Leo chimed in, describing the stuffed bear's adventures on their ill-fated journey. When the candle burned low, Harlan looked around at the smiling faces. For years, he convinced himself that his solitary work was enough, that he didn't need anyone else. But now, as laughter filled the dome, he realized how wrong he'd been. The next morning, they set to work repairing the constellation. Harlan offered spare parts from his station, and within a few days, the ship was operational again. As the crew prepared to depart, Mira turned to Harlan. "You could come with us, you know. There's always room for someone like you." Harlan smiled, the thought tempting. But he shook his head. "Not yet. Still got work to do here. But don't be a stranger." She nodded, handing him a small transmitter. "Anytime you want company, just call. We owe you that much." As the constellation disappeared into the black, Harlan returned to his dome. The silence felt less oppressive now. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He glanced at the table, where the remnants of their makeshift Thanksgiving feast still sat. Picking up the stuffed bear Leo had forgotten, he chuckled. "Guess I got company after all." Harlan placed the bear on a shelf near the window, its stitched eyes gazing out at the stars. And for the first time in years, he looked forward to the future.